What is the family violence finding, and is there a way you can avoid it? Hey y'all, my name is Rob Chesnutt, founder at ATX Legal, and today we're going to be talking about the family violence finding. If you don't know what that is, I'll go over that briefly. I do have other videos describing it, but in this video we're going to talk about specifically, can you avoid it and how can you avoid it if you've been charged with assault family violence? Now, first of all, what is the family violence finding? It's a collateral consequence to a conviction, and it could be for a conviction on a felony or a misdemeanor assault family violence. And if you want the definition on what assault family violence is, I would suggest you check out some of my other videos, but basically intimate partner violence. And a collateral consequence just means an additional consequence beyond the standard consequence for a misdemeanor or felony. So each misdemeanor, whether it's a Class B, Class A, or state jail felony, on up, is going to have a certain range of penalties. So it'll be a fine of up to a certain amount, jail time up to a certain amount. The family violence finding is an additional penalty on top of that. And there are a few consequences that go along with that. You can never own a gun, and that's for life. Future assault family violence cases will be automatically charged as a felony, and you won't be able to seal or expunge the record. And it could cause consequences for other charges that you won't be able to expunge or seal as well. And in addition to that, there's the social stigma of having a family violence charge on your record, and that should not be overlooked. So all in all, it's a very serious consequence, something that is to be avoided if you can possibly avoid it. But how do you avoid it? Now, before I go into how you avoid it, it's actually easier to talk about the ways you can't avoid it because it applies in so many situations. Now, first of all, you can't avoid it just by doing a plea bargain with the prosecutor. Why is that? Because by statute, by law, if you do plead to a conviction on a family violence case, that family violence finding applies. Even if they don't affirmatively put it into the plea bargain, even if the judge doesn't state it in open court, or if it's not written down anywhere at all, it still applies. So you have to be very careful with that. You can't come to an agreement with the prosecutors like, oh, I'm going to go ahead and agree to a conviction here, but let's avoid the family violence finding. It's not possible. The prosecutors can't do it, the judge can't do it, and you can't do it. So that's not a way to avoid the family violence finding. A second way you're not going to be able to avoid the family violence finding is with a deferred adjudication. Now, you might look at the language of the deferred adjudication and say, oh, it's not a conviction. In fact, the judge is withholding a conviction. And so you might think, without a conviction, there's no family violence finding. Well, specifically in the statute, if you sign a deferred adjudication, it's treated as a conviction for the purposes of the family violence finding. So that is another way you're not going to avoid a family violence finding. And again, the judge, the prosecutor, nobody has the authority to waive that family violence finding. Now, what if you say, oh, well, I'm pleading the charge down to a simple assault? That can work in some cases, but you have to be very, very careful. And I typically don't do these in my cases because in a later proceeding, a prosecutor could come back and actually dig into the facts of that case and then prove up a family violence finding in a later case. So even if you're getting it pled all the way down to a simple assault, it's still a bad idea to plead to that charge because the family violence finding could still apply. So now we've talked about all the ways where you cannot avoid a family violence finding, but I promise you it's not all bad. There are ways you can avoid it. And in fact, I avoid it in, I would say, over half my cases, if not 80 or 90% of my cases. So there are actually two key ways to avoid it, and I'm going to get to them both right now. The first way should be obvious, and that's if you get your case dismissed. If your case is dismissed, there's no conviction, there's no deferred adjudication. You can get your case expunged so the records get completely destroyed or deleted as if they never even happened. And obviously there's no family violence finding there. So you might be wondering to yourself, how many of these cases get dismissed? Actually, quite a few. These types of cases get dismissed at a higher frequency than other types of cases. Part of that's just the game theory, because when there's something so serious on the line, defense attorneys are gonna push back. I push back hard on these cases. And what that means is if the prosecutors want to get convictions on these cases, they have to take them to trial, and they have a limited amount of resources to go to trial. So there's always a backlog of assault family violence cases, which means you can often get them dismissed. Now, obviously, the cooperation of the alleged victim is going to be helpful in getting the case dismissed, but it's not the only factor. They can go forward without the cooperation of the alleged victim, or they can drop charges even when the alleged victim is pushing for a conviction. So it's not the only factor, but it is a big factor. Now, the second way to avoid a family violence finding is with pretrial diversion. In Travis County, it's called FVIP, Family Violence Intervention Program, but a lot of diversion programs kind of work the same way, which means that over a period of time, you cannot pick up any new charges, anything Class B or higher, even if it's not a family violence charge, no new charges. Plus, you would need to complete some classes and community service over that time. And at the end of that period, the case is dismissed. And because it results in that dismissal, there's no family violence finding, and you can have your records expunged. So even though those are the only two ways that you can avoid the family violence finding, I do find that in the majority of my cases, I am able to get to one of those two results for my client. Now, if you're watching this video because you or a loved one has been charged with assault family violence and you're looking for an attorney, ATX Legal is a boutique law firm. We don't handle appointed cases, so we can give more personalized and better care to our clients. Give us a call or a text message or visit us at atx.legal for a no-cost consultation.